right. So, family, we are back. We are back. We are back. We are back. Has some technical difficulties, but that is okay because we still rocking, right? That is resilience for you right there. All right. So we had left off with our Thomas Sowell about appropriation of the Black redneck culture, and then Professor Kelly, you were going into about how Kwanzaa was to maybe counteract those appropriation of lifestyles that we took on and didn't benefit us.
Exactly. Counteract that negativity that you see in what we call ghetto life or ghetto activity. He also made reference to the fact that if let's say if a person other than a black person is to adopt a black child, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is to reincorporate that child into their culture, right? Because you may be, let's say I'm Asian and I'm raising a black child, I need to do a little bit to bring that child into its cultural relativity. But usually it's usually the black redneck culture that your child will be learning. He would not be learning anything other than the black redneck culture. And that's the problem in itself. So what are we looking at? You're looking at a deprivation of attitudes and beliefs. You see it also when we look at some of the cultural things that we consume, like chitlins.
Oof, man.
That's an example of black redneck culture. That's usually from Northern Europe. That the chitlin environment. I think they still refer to it as chitlins as well.
Isn't that was it haggis or something like that? Or isn't haggis that or that delicacy?
It's a Northern European word concept which we have embraced because out of slavery, and it comes. He ID like maybe Scottish, Irish areas.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Places like that where there was little indifferent in regards to law. In any kind of order. So they was people who was actually, take the law in their own hand type environment,
Yeah.
Handle, very touchy, have a chip on their shoulder. So as soon as you say one word to them, they're about to fight you and do all of this craziness to you because they're violent people. So that's a part of that culture.
Yeah.
And we glorify that to some degree. Look at the gangster rap. We glorify black redneck culture in our rap, in our music, how we dress to people, how we talk to people. And those skill sets are not beneficial to the elevation of the individual in no way, shape, form. Mm-hmm. So why would you embrace a skill or a lifestyle that does not benefit you in any way, shape, form? Right. It's like wearing Timberland boots and you in the urban environment.
What are you talking about, Fisker? That's a New York staple. That's a New York staple. The Timbs in the summer with the shorts and the sweaty feet. Socks.
you around no large timbers, Timberlands and
unlaced
wearing a North Face coat in an environment that will never get below zero.
Wow. I mean, hey, fashion. It's like, hey, I was part of it to some degree. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna front. I wasn't. But let me say this. Let me play the obtuse here, right? The contrarian. What about them doing it because it does benefit them somehow? They feel like it benefits them. I mean, maybe they feel like this protects them or this makes them valuable in their environment, and they feel like, well, if I don't have this, if I don't acquire these material things or this type of attitude, that I'm not going to survive, or I'm not going to be seen as somebody that is of my peer group, worthy of my peer group.
Exactly. So I think we already know the answer to that question. They have a lot to do with self-esteem. We all know that. We seen that coming 1,000 years ago. That people do things in reflection of trying to be a part of a larger group, when in fact they lack self-efficacy. And self-efficacy will get you to wear a North Face coat in an environment that only gets 40 degrees the coldest on average, or wear Timberland boots in a concrete jungle, or wear like a ski suit in an environment where only maybe snow maybe 2 or 3 times a year. So that have like self-esteem, and hopefully if you dress a certain way, people can overlook the fact that you lack self-esteem, that you lack self-efficacy, that you lack certain that you may not like yourself or where you come from. Most people don't like themselves, but they don't know they don't like themselves. But the idea is that you do things to cover up for the fact that you don't like yourself. So you do things. And he also talks a lot about people seeking pleasure, going to parties, going to clubs, strip clubs. He talks a lot about pleasure seeking, and that's also from that the white redneck culture coming from Northern Europe, hanging out in clubs and partying, and how you do the rah-rah thing, hanging out. That's a part of European culture. and not going to church on Sunday because they was
Hmm.
turned up all Saturday, Friday, Saturday. They don't go to church.
Yeah.
That was a part of that as well. And then what he also made reference to the fact that, and if you, what he looked at, he said, if you look at the northern blacks between, I say, the 1700s, who was never enslaved, all the way
Hmm.
to the 1950s, who was never a part of that slave culture or that redneck culture, they
Right.
didn't embrace that skill set. They didn't have that environment of decadence and loudness and being outside of themselves. These are
Hmm.
conservative people who you will see people like the Martin Luther Kings of the world. You know,
Hmm.
the people who didn't come from that kind of decadent lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then when he talks a lot about the opening up the idea of white liberalism, which opened up the idea of the disenfranchising of the black family, and that's
Okay.
where that came in. And then they also cause other things as far as the unappreciation of an education. And then you see a
Hmm.
lot of immigrants coming into the country who are very appreciative of an education. They
Right.
believe the concepts of science and math and rigor. But you're sitting here saying, "Oh, I don't want to do. I want to major in art and fashion. I want to
Mm.
become a clothing designer.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, I want to
Yeah.
get. You go from basketball to a suit. I want to be suits or something like that. As opposed to rigor, using that
Yeah.
money to put it in an environment that's going to create what we call generational wealth. And that's what you see among immigrants coming in. They're majoring in key areas of engineering and economics, and they make good for themselves. And he talks a lot about different types of immigrants coming in, like the Maharatis Indians, or
Hmm.
maybe the overseas Chinese, or maybe the Caribbeans are coming in from the West Indies who moved to the north, and they
Hmm.
come in to start these businesses. He also talked a lot about northern black people started these businesses in the north was
Hmm.
primarily Caribbeans. Caribbeans
Hmm.
started businesses. These restaurants and these tailor shops was started by Black Caribbeans coming in from countries where they was the only show in town. There
Yeah.
was a large white population in the Caribbean population, so they had to be able to manage their own books, manage their own affairs.
Hmm.
So here in the United States, most of the blacks didn't have that options of opening up a business and managing their own affairs. So those skill sets that came from the immigrants coming in, they did the same thing. Same thing with the Jews, who was the first to start it internationally. So wherever they went, they left a footprint of success, be
Hmm.
it business and economics or accounting, be it wherever they was in, they created an industry for themselves. Like the garment industry was created by the Jews. It was created by the Jews who was living in Eastern and Western Europe, who was able to not only manufacture clothes but also to sell it and to process it into larger plants. And that's why we able to go to the store right now and buy clothes off the shelf. That's part of what the Jews was responsible for. They created that industry of making
Mm.
where you can go to the store and buy extra large, large, and medium.
And
They
that's
create.
and that's interesting that you say that because like when I look at certain movies, it's like they got the here in New York, the tall and fat stores.
Mhm.
I mainly grew up down south, so that wasn't really a thing. But like just that dynamic of alone, I'm so used to going into a store and having clothes on the rack where
Yeah,
that wasn't always the case. That's a great point.
it wasn't.
That wasn't always the case.
No, not at all. They created that industry because things was custom. People used to have
Yeah,
custom clothing back then.
yeah.
People wore clothes that was custom made. You go to a tailor, they're custom made a suit for you. But
Hmm.
up until that time, the overseas, actually, I would say the international Jew population who came around in the 1800s, they started that whole thing of mass production or piecework, what we call when you just you do the collar, the sleeve here. This other guy going to do the neckline. He's going to do that,
Hmm.
and then they just piece it together and they create a whole whatever it is they're going to create. That's
Yeah.
the part of and they created that whole garment industry, which is you find in New York City, which was one of the largest garment industries in New York. But it was basically mass production of clothing, which we now take for granted because now you see it in China being manufactured, but it was really a Jewish construction. Same thing when
Wow.
you talk about manufacturing of small goods, machinery,
Yeah.
machinery parts. That was basically German Jews doing it. German Jews were responsible for a lot of the manufacturing of all the machinery that we see, the mass production of shoemaking machines,
Hmm.
helicopters, cars, car parts. That come
See,
from a population of people.
And see, and that ties into what I was asking earlier, like when we talk about like manhood, black manhood, because they're mutually exclusive. They're not totally like the same. They are different. But like what I was mentioning to you earlier from the talks I've had with other people about the role of men in society. Like we build things, like you said, the machines, the machinery, the shoe lasting, the garment industry, and the process of like what get into becoming the assembly line. Like we created these things,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, but that's looked upon now as seemed like a negative,
hmm
right?
But you have to remember, you're coming from a different mindset. See, you're taking on the European concept of manhood as opposed to the African concept of manhood.
Mm-hmm.
African concepts of manhood, now, even most Africans would say, no, you're still off because an African usually only goes back 400 years.
Hmm.
An African mindset is usually going back at least 4 to 5,000, or if not 10,000 years of civilization. But the
Mm-hmm.
average African living in maybe someplace like Ghana or maybe Nigeria wouldn't understand the concept of African way of movement, which was basically women dominance. Women ran the businesses. Women
Mm-hmm.
actually operated the stores and whatever it is, the marketplace. She also ran the
Mm-hmm.
household. What the man was responsible for was providing structure and support and security. So when you look at the role of a male in the household was always to provide structure and security. That's what
Mm-hmm.
the role was for. You are not necessarily to do what we call the husbandry of the relationship, which is the day in
Okay.
and day out. So, what the role of a man ideally is to provide the structure. So, if you're going to
Mm-hmm.
start a business, you're there to create the structure of the business. And the woman is there to maintain, and she used to do all of the servicing that goes along in that business. And he out go out and expand the business. So, get another spot, and he plentiful that place with more women to do the work. She's
Mm-hmm.
much better at managing, historically, at managing the day in and day out of the intricacies of a business. And you see it in your family. You see how
Mm-hmm.
women, if I know I see it in my wife is much more aware of the things that I may or may not be. Who's thinking about the garbage and homework at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about
Mm-hmm.
taking garbage out, but she's thinking about not only harvest. Oh, we had to also do this and what to do, and planning the vacation, and also think about making sure everything is in its order. And that's what women tend to do in our
Mm-hmm.
society. And if properly supported, she would do an excellent job at maintaining that. But
Mm-hmm.
historically, but we're looking at it from a European perspective, which means you put a male in role in responsible to all of those little things. And because we are tend to be one track minded, men tend not to
Mm-hmm.
be flexible, especially as we get
Right.
older. It
Yeah.
creates discourse, and it creates the discourse, and as a result of it, we get into arguments and fights with each other. We become
Mm-hmm.
violent towards each other. We become deceitful and lying and conniving, and we start to create an environment of untrustworthiness. And that's what we have all over the world right now. Men running countries, and they can't rely on each other, and they go against each other. As
Mm-hmm.
opposed to allowing, you know, you gotta be open minded when it comes to running things, and women allow that to happen because they communicate not on just one level; they communicate on multiple levels. They have a lot of levels of interest, and that's what allows the society to where we come from exist for like 10, 15 thousands of years. We come from a society that existed 10, 15 thousands of years in one stretch.
True.
Here
True.
we are in a country that only lasts for the last 200 years, 300 years, and on its way out.
Yeah.
And we've been because I've been there for like 10, 15,000 years. And
Yeah.
because of you had a balance of power and skill sets. And
Yeah.
it was a holistic approach to it. It's not like you're doing this and that this doesn't relate to this. This related to this, which related to that. And it was a codependency attached to
Right.
it. That's why those societies lasted so long. And that's why relationships last long.
Mm-hmm.
So the role of a man primarily is to provide that structure and support so that it can grow.
Mm-hmm.
That's our role. You know.
Now, let me interject on this, Scully, like, because I agree with a lot of what you're saying. But like as you know, I talked about before, you and I talked about it many occasions, the inherent racism and white supremacy that permeates our society that we have to live with every day in various, religion, law, sex,
Mhm.
politics, sports, entertainment, food, fashion, all those dynamics, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
War, religion. Like, how do we begin to start that for ourselves? Because, like you said, I think a lot of men, especially the negative connotation on black men and manhood, we want to do those things, but like you said, we've appropriated another person's culture with the black redneck
Mhm. Yeah.
dynamic. But like, how do we begin to unpack that, or just start from a place of getting to that like ideal state of like how we can so we can prosper together?
You got to give up the idea of looking over your shoulders and just do what
Mm,
you got to do. You can't compete with the next man who's already had a 300-400 year head start on you. You're not going to win that race.
mm,
His races is done within the development of his family, his religion, his ethnic and cultural group. They're doing business together. Most time, the Chinese person is going to do business with a Chinese person, and vice versa. Everybody else is going to do business. So you can't enter that market
mm,
because you don't have that historical connection. Cool. So if you don't have that, stop looking over your shoulder and looking at what he's doing and do what you got to do. You know.
mm,
And how do you do that? You just whatever skill you have, maximize it, and that's what you do. You follow your skill set, you use it to your advantage, and not to say that you want to be competing with the next man. You're not. You just want to ink out a market for yourself, a little bit of
mm,
area that you can operate under and be successful at it. Because a lot of us are comparing ourselves to someone that we would never be equal to. And there's always going to be someone better than us, and there's going to be someone worse than us. So the
right.
idea is stop looking over your shoulder, be the best that you put your head down, be the best that you can possibly be, and do well at it. And then if you look back 10, 15 years down the line, you'd be like, wow, I came far. You did come far because you stopped looking over your shoulders and just look ahead and did what you had to have done. And make sure that your decisions are solid decisions. For example, a lot of us have, I was looking at the NBA players.
Mm-hmm.
And so about
Recent draft.
the 3 to 5 year broke, whatever that is. And
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and
When
I
they
was
first moved
saying
to
to
the league.
myself, what did they do? And a lot of them had solid investments in hotels
Yep.
and restaurants and
Mm-hmm.
franchise. So they had solid, but the only thing that it was missing was the connections. They was
Yeah.
missing the legitimate connections with individuals that can actually carry them to the next level. Now you got to remember, all business is done on who you know. That's what it
Mm-hmm.
really comes down to. It have really nothing to do
Relationship.
with
Yeah,
it's
relationships.
not about a counter service. You can't come in and I offer you over the counter service. Business is
Yeah.
not done that way. It's done with who you know. So, when, for example, if you're going to give someone a $7 million down payment on a transaction,
Mm-hmm.
you don't just know that person by his first name. You know that person by his family, his cousins, his brothers, his other clients. You know that person more than the average person would
Wow.
know that person. And
Yeah.
that's when you can transfer. So when you can behold him to that. So in the end, I gave you the 7 million, but I also can behold you to that because at the end of the day, if you don't give me back my seven, which I know you're going to do, I can always have recourse. And the recourse doesn't look like going to court. It looks more like, yo, what's going on with you? Let's have this
Mm-hmm.
conversation. What went
Yeah.
wrong before you even did it?
Right.
You know, that's the relationship you have, and that's what you see with other coaches or people who have been successful. But historically, it's always been done that way. There's no such
Mm-hmm.
thing as the reason why we had a demise in our society is because of that. Because we try to provide counter service to people when in fact we didn't have a relationship with them. So whenever you provide counter service to individuals or over the counter service to individuals, someone's going to have some level of resentment because they
Mm-hmm.
don't understand where it's coming from, and they're going to try to, you know, get back at you, and
Yeah.
that's what happened. So you offer, and you see it when you seen Africans trading in the Americas. We was trading in the Americas, and we was trading in Asia and parts of Europe. You
Mm-hmm.
see the resentment because
Mm-hmm.
how can you be trading with me, but you come in here with all of these jewels wrapped around your cart? You have gold on your cart that is used as ornamental, but yet you selling me something else that I may need. You
Hmm.
know, first
Yeah.
travelers, we were the first international travelers.
Mm-hmm.
Traveling and we selling these people goods, but look what you're doing. Look, I'm looking at what you got. You can't be that well dressed in this part of town when we are criminals and we trying to get what you trying to get, and that's what got them to pick up their guns and came and get you. They came and got you because of that.
Mm.
Started way back, you know, maybe 6, 7 thousand years ago. They
Wow.
picked up, and it was internal also. Africans was fighting Africans because you had all the goods, and I needed your goods.
Mm-hmm.
You can't come to me like that. And that's what happened,
Mm.
you know? So,
Wow, and these are dynamics I'm glad we're talking about. And
mhm,
again, family, this is our, definitely like, share, subscribe. But these are our opinions that we're sharing. Again, you don't have to agree with them, but this just it definitely a good food for thought, because
mhm,
when we talk about these terms that are being thrown around, especially when we talk
mhm,
about masculinity, toxic masculinity, black men are criminals and lazy, and they're not prospering in society as they think they should, or they're abusers. Like, black men come into a family, change dynamic, but they typically for the worse. And
mhm,
young brothers are shooting up each other, which is not unfortunately, I hate to
mhm,
say it, is not a anomaly. It's not, it
mhm,
didn't just start occurring. It's been happening for years and years and years.
mhm.
But I want us to kind of unpack that, but also look behind the curtain, as they
Yeah.
say. Like, we see the show, but what's behind the curtain that's perpetuating the show? It's
I'm trying
like,
to remember what you talked about is that the demise of the poor and the disenfranchised,
yeah,
shooting themselves, turning to gangs and guns and things like that. That's a
yeah,
certain echelon of people. We know that.
yeah,
We don't see people coming out of China or India or from these struggling countries shooting each other and ganging each other. These are
mhm,
families coming over to try to make a better life for themselves. But
yeah,
what we see among this population, people who forming these gangs and shooting all of these innocent people on streets walking by and people in their homes getting bullets going through their front door, that's a certain population of people who's doing that. And it's
true.
usually those who, and we always relegated to poor neighborhoods, but people in middle class neighborhoods are having bullets going through their windows too, because they
Mm,
fail to realize that middle class people are just as connected to poor people. Good example would be this: you went to college and got a college degree, went on to become a successful lawyer and made 7, 8 figures. Guess what? You have a brother who didn't do the same thing, right?
mm,
But
right.
he's still in that below poverty mindset, but he's your family member. So at the end of the day, he's going to bring his problems right to you. So even
Mm,
though you moved up, they are still in association with you. And that's the problem. So when you really want to make change, it's going to have to take at least 3 generations for that to change. So in
mm-hmm,
essence, you and your brother having issues, you may make it, but you're more thinking your goal is to think more on the line of your grandkids, because your grandkids is going to be disassociated with that negative behavior, as
mm-hmm,
your kids who's going to remember your brother. Oh, I remember Uncle so and so, but your grandkids wouldn't know Uncle so and so, and that's where the
mm-hmm.
change takes place. So change is going to take place in time, but there's a certain population that bring that arbitrage to us, that brings that negativity to us. And the sad thing about it that it's so deep, it's seated in their mindset that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's the part.
The thing that kills me to think that if you in this drug life or this negative lifestyle and you believe what you're doing is correct and have understanding behind it, and you only 15, 16 years old, I mean,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah,
where's this going? You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And the sad thing about that black redneck culture is that it's pervasive. We have taught Hispanics how to behave that way. You have
Mm,
taught people who coming out of these Spanish speaking countries to learn how to dress ghetto, to learn how to talk ghetto, to listen to that rap music, to perpetuate that black redneck behavior. So you look at
mhm.
Hispanic, you look at certain Asian people or Caribbean, African, they haven't bought into that mentality. We call it ghetto mentality, but they bought into that.
Yeah,
They bought into that decadence and that low level lifestyle. Wearing of the chains, wearing of the hats, wearing of the clothes falling off your behind, all kind of. They bought that.
yeah,
You showed them that black redneck culture. The decadence,
yeah.
this disadvantage. I mean, the disobeying of all societal rules, dropping out of school, toting the
Mm-hmm,
gun, selling drugs. You know, that's black
mm-hmm,
redneck culture.
mm-hmm. Mm.
Thomas Sowell, he was hated for a lot of. He's actually think he's still hated by the black conservatives for that mentality because he kind of broke with them a little bit. You know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When I looked at his interviews, I could tell, like, he's definitely astute. He definitely tell you he's taking time to do research and study. Uh,
Yeah.
and like, he gets a lot of, like you say, if you got to have the not the stomach for it, but you got to be ready to be, like, maybe offended by what he's saying. But what he's saying
Mhm.
is to
Mhm.
to really, again, take the shades off and be like, look, here's what we're really looking at. Like,
Yeah.
let's not make this
Mhm.
uh, not a character of itself, but, like, really look at this for what it really truly is. Like, let's not get inundated with all these kind of like fancies, like, oh, it's not that bad, and oh no, this just happens. It's like, no, like here's some actual things that are that have transpired that have led us to this behavior right now. Like, let's
Exactly. And the thing that he talks about is the proof that like shows you the route you took to get to that point. And that's the problem. When people don't like proof, but proof is usually the thing it comforts you in knowing.
right.
It also comforts you in the change because you can actually go back and assess the proof and to see that it is responsible for your behavior. And that's the sad thing about, in research, we do a lot of things about fact finding. So fact find, you also have to test the integrity of your proof and see if it stands up over
Right.
the course of time or environment. And those things can change if you change the circumstances. It could change. But 9 times out of 10, there's a rationale to the reason as to why. Colder temperatures, warmer temperatures can change some result. We know that. But those are the implications. The idea is that most people don't want to deal with that. Most people don't like change. And I hate to say it, those who tend to be a little bit disenfranchised in places that I come from disenfranchisement, we don't like change. We like status quo. We don't like to be uncomfortable at any given time.
That's true.
Because what happens is it's going to force us to make a change. And they don't know that life is all about being uncomfortable. And if you're not uncomfortable, you're not living.
You're not living, you're not growing. Yeah, that's
So he
that's,
talks a
that's
lot
the
about
instant dichotomy, man. This is the instant juxtaposition. Like the uncomfortability is the growth that you actually need.
and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. I remember
Right.
I was playing sports one time. The coach was telling me that he was like, "Listen, whenever you play, why you think that? Why don't get comfortable? You have to be thinking about the things that's going to make you uncomfortable, and how you do that will make you better at what you do." And that's what it came down to.
Man.
The next
And let me interject this too, Professor Kelly. How do we know what to not be what to be uncomfortable with? Because some people may take that as, well, I'm going to put myself in like a very maybe violent or very contentious situation just to make myself uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But then it ends up to be a fatal mistake, like a mortal
But you have to
mistake.
do proper assessments.
There you go.
Human
See?
capital is key, and that's one of the problems we have in our communities, that we lack human capital. I mean, quality human capital is people who have values, who have wherewithal, who have been put through life rigor and understand that there's a value attached to all the things that you're doing. So if you have people like that in your circle, then you're not going to have too many. You're not going to be going down to a lot of dark hallways. You're going to go down a dark hallway, but you know how the hallway is going to be constructed.
Yeah.
But if you haven't had that, your life would be just a dark hallway, just feeling your way through, because you don't have human capital around you to tell you how to move. And everything in life does not need to be accomplished. Everything in life does not need to be explored. Once you have come to that understanding, then you're comfortable with it. I don't have to go to Morocco. I don't have to go to Israel. I don't have to go to Australia. You don't have to if you don't want to. And if your life will be just as good if you do or you don't. It doesn't matter. Once you get comfortable. And another thing is that if you don't feel that you have accomplished certain things, like in education, I never went to college. So what? You didn't go to college. Still doesn't mean that you can't be a bright person.
Right. True.
No, you can still be a bright person and not go to college. You can still be an insightful person and not go to college. You still have good friends and not go to college, and good associates. But most people don't have. That's what keeps people down, is the fact that they're not willing to give up to the fact that they have not done whatever it is they want. They holding on to that. I should. No, it's okay. Let that down. You're still going to be a good person. And I think a lot of, when you look at black malehood, that's usually the problem. A lot of black men have problems with. We have a lot of resentment in our life. Answering your question about black malehood, the resentment comes from this. You know that you had a baby with this young lady. You also may have a baby with another young lady or another young lady. And the mere fact that you never married, the mere fact that you have never took care of those kids, the mere fact that you have never elevated yourself professionally or whatever it is you may be doing, or let's say you do have money and you do have all of these things, but you haven't done certain things that made you satisfied. Therefore, that's the resentment. And therefore, you're going to live the rest of your life with that resentment until you let that thing go down. You can go to therapy all you want. Therapy is nothing more than, just insightful thinking.
Right. And I was going to mention that. Yeah, definitely about therapy, counseling.
Yeah, it's just an insightful thing. And once you get that, then you should be okay with it because you understand the limits of who you are as a person. But the reality is that you have to accept that, you know? And I think black men are suffering from that. Accepting the fact that your roles are changing, you know? Your wife is your partner. She's not someone you rule over. She
Right.
don't rule over you. She's a partner. She's the person who you pass the tool on to. She passed the tool to you, and you'll work together as a unit. Same
Right.
thing, you raise your kids to be your partner. You don't raise your kids to be your kids. Your kids are to one day elevate to adulthood, and you raise them to become partners, and then you pass the tool off, they move along, and then they guide. They do the same thing. That's the process of malehood. Is to move along this process of having good people around. And you have to build that. And a lot
True.
of us have resentment because we have failed to build our families like we're supposed to. I think the
Mm.
biggest problem with a man today is that his failure to build his family the way he feel he should have built that family. And part of the reason is that
Hmm.
we, I mean, in order for a family to come together as a whole, you need that dude. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
It's like you got
Yeah.
a house, but you ain't got no screws to put the wood together. That wood, I mean, it's hanging up.
Right.
It needs to be tightened a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Well,
Yeah. So
that's
like you said, speaking on that, I talked with recent brothers and we talked about like the whole dynamic of right malehood. Cause we talking about like adulthood, manhood. So like manhood. I mean, excuse me, malehood, boyhood, manhood, adulthood. Right, like those phases.
mm-hmm.
Like, cause you have some people who felt like in their boyhood stage they didn't get the necessary tools to be able to become the proper man. We talk about like resentment,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how I guess like what are ways that we can get around that or improve that even if we feel like we've been
Deprived.
neglected, yeah, probably neglected
Mhm.
early on.
Yeah. Well, you have to remember, you have to acknowledge the fact that that's the first part of it. The first stages of atonement is to acknowledge, right?
Right.
First stage of atonement is to acknowledge. Once you acknowledge that you have some deficits in your life, the next stage would be to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
So once you acknowledge that I have a problem, the next step is to do something. And then once you go to this do something stage, at that point you are now moving towards healing yourself or
Mm-hmm.
atoning whatever it is that you may or may not have done to yourself. Someone can hurt you and you still have to atone, even though you didn't deserve
Mm-hmm.
that. You could have been raised in a foster home or a group home and your mom and dad hurt you. You didn't want to be there, but you have to atone for the fact that you're there, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to someone who committed a crime against someone knowingly, and they have to atone for that as well. So
Yeah.
the atonement is a healing process, but it comes with acknowledgement. And once you fully acknowledge, then you can move to what we call the physical action of submitting oneself to be able to make the change and to atone for it. And a lot of us have not atoned for the fact that we grew up in the hood, have not atoned for the fact that we have glorified behavior that has not been beneficial to us, our family, or our community. We have not also atoned to the fact that we have been womanizing and manizing and having sex in and out of relationships and doing all this craziness for the gratifications of what? you know. And
Right.
after, a lot of things we take for granted. Even we sold drugs or we sold guns, we kill people. We have never atoned for that. And if you
Mm-hmm.
don't atone for that, it will break your spirit at some point. And then you'll get to a point in life where you wouldn't even know why you the way you are. And that's what you find with a lot of older people. I know I deal with a lot of people in their 50s. Most of my peers are in their 50s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And we sit and we have conversations and they don't even know why they're broken. They don't know why they're broken. And they have been broken for so many years that death can't come fast enough, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the idea is that, I mean, what does life has to offer because you have never atoned for whatever it is you will. They don't know they are. It is what it is.
Wow.
Scary
Wow.
situation.
That's sobering right there.
Yeah.
That's real. But that's why I want to have this talk because those are things that I think that in my generation, in my 40s on back, that we really don't begin to really fully be aware of or acknowledge that, like, hey, if we don't rectify or become aware of the things that we may be doing against ourselves, we get to a certain age where you can't run anymore. It's going to hit you square, it's going to hit you, front and center. And you're going to have to really face that and deal with that. But will you have the mechanisms and, like you said, the human capital around you to be able to, like, process that?
You have to remember, I have people also who not only do they know they need to atone, because guess what? They don't have any family structure around you. You're 60, 70 years old.
Yeah.
You have no wife. You have no kids. And you're a man living at home single. You're a single man in your 60s to 80s, and you have no one knocking on that door looking for you. At some point, they're going to smell you, and they're going to come and get you, and they're going to take you to the grave, right? Because this is what it's coming down to. But they also fail to realize that they are not interested in making their life any better. So death is their best option. And we don't talk openly about death and the role and responsibility of being deaf. Sometimes that's the best way out. Some of us are not built for change. Some of us do not want to change. So at some point, you say, listen, I had a friend of mine. I was running I think it was a mental health program somewhere in Staten Island, right? And he kept having these seizures and strokes. He had like 3 or 4 of them, and we kept catching them and bringing them back. And he was like, yo, the next time I go through that, just let me go. Wow. I don't want to do this no more. And that's the first time I ever seen someone legitimately say, yo, this is it. I mean, he spent a life of jail and drugs and heroin. And I mean, he had been at that time, late 60s. He's like, I don't want to do this no more. I know what good life looks like, but I'm not built for that. I don't have enough. I don't have 60 more years of reaffirming myself. And even if I reaffirm myself, for what purpose? I have no good people around me to do it. So in that instance, you could see why death needed to come faster than needed. It was his out.
Yeah.
Deal with the day-to-day responsibility. And a lot of men look at it like that. We actually commit suicide on a smaller scale way before we actually do it.
That's enough, man. Professor. Man, that is another topic that a lot of people don't want to delve into, but I start to realize that in the past few years. Like we talk about what's classified as suicide, like say it's already ruminating even before the actual act even occurs.
You got to remember, death is bad for everybody. There's also a good aspect to death too. It's a cleansing process of the social environment that it is. So we don't talk about the benefits attached to it, because there is a lot of benefits attached to it. And because of human beings, we don't talk a lot about it, but it also cleanses that. It takes out the burden of society. Whenever we had this thing with an alarm, in case there's a fire in a particular building with steps and no elevator, what do you do with the people who are handicapped? How do you get them down the steps?
Right.
You know what the protocol was, right?
Leave them there, right?
Yeah. You leave them there. You put them in the area and tell the authorities when you get to the bottom outside where they at. That was hard for me to take, because when I was like, hold up, you're gonna leave it, but then you're thinking about it. You be like, hold up, this person can't walk, they're in a wheelchair. You can't carry a 200-300 pound person. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you have to remember there's some caveats to it. We don't talk about the positives attached to it. But the positive is that it takes away the social burden of you being responsible. Like I know just before my mother passed away, she was going through a chronic issue with her heart, right? And every day I used to call her, and I'm like, wow, this is hard for a child to think about the death of their parents. But you knew that day was coming, and I used to randomly call, and my calls became survival calls. And you just calling up, not to say hi, but just to make sure that you're still breathing.
I know that.
And then one day you get that call.
Yep.
That call is not going to be answered. And I knew that was the day. And it's hard to do that. But at the same time, I'm thinking back, she didn't want to do this no more. You know what I'm saying? It was a lot going on her. She didn't want to do it. She didn't want to keep, she wanted to keep her personality, who she was as a person. You don't want to lose your independence to a medical system or a rehab center or some kind of medical environment. You want to keep whatever integrity you had as a human. She wanted to keep that, and she did. But at the same time, looking back at it, I was happy because you was happy. I was happy because you was happy, and I was happy that you was no longer going through that, whatever it is you was going through. And I'm pretty sure no one can ever know what you was really going through. And to be honest with you, you don't have a right to share that if you don't want to. But we did have conversations in regards to her oxygen level and her kidney functions and all this other
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But the idea is that it helps clean the social spirit. You know, the human condition and your social responsibility can be alleviated by having people move on, and that's the ugly side of that conversation, but it's the truth. You know, you
Yeah.
have a house full of people who are disabled who will never get better. And then you got to house these people and feed them, and they're never going to get better. So
Yeah.
if you remove these people, how would you feel?
Right.
It's not it's not a good conversation.
Nah. Yeah.
But in
It's a
retrospect,
difficult conversation.
yeah,
It's a
it's
difficult
a very
conversation.
difficult conversation. And I remember
Yeah.
back in the '90s, they had a guy named Dr. Kevorkian. You remember that dude,
Oh
Dr.
wow.
Kevorkian?
I definitely remember out of Michigan. Yeah, Dr. Gavorkin out of Michigan. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was his job. His
Yep.
job was there to go in there and do his due. And you know, I couldn't understand it when he was doing it back in the day.
Yeah.
But as I
Yeah.
got older, I realized, oh, hold up, dude, you making a whole lot of sense here. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Because people, for the family, for those who don't know, Dr. Kevorkian was this white guy out of Michigan who
Mhm.
was basically helping people to transition to die. Like, so
Yeah,
he would give them medications or do certain lethal injections, but under their supervision. Like, they chose him and they wrote out like, "Hey, I want you to be the person that puts me
yeah,
under
mhm.
to into death." So he caught a lot of flack and he got arrested. I think he didn't
Yeah,
get in prison for that.
yeah. They shut him down. They shut
Yeah,
him
so that's
down,
practice and
literally.
everything.
hmm Because you have
Yeah,
to remember that you got to preserve life. The key with this is that you cannot talk too much about suicide in the sense that because there are a lot of people who are not mentally stable, and they may become practitioners, so they may practice on themselves, and
yeah,
that's not good. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So we
nah,
try to
yeah.
keep that out the news, try to keep it out the public eye, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
reality. It's a reality that most of
Very
us
much
suffer
so.
with, and a lot of us are committing what we call legal suicide. You know what I'm saying? The dude smoked 10 blunts in one day. That's not
Exactly.
legal. Come on, what are
Exactly.
you doing?
Walking into what they call the ops, walking into the ops neighborhood and saying I'm here. Like we've heard of that with the
Yeah,
youth. Like they'll walk into the rival neighborhood knowing that they're more likely gonna get shot up. They'll walk in the
mhm,
neighborhood just like I'm tired.
yeah,
You know.
exactly.
Yeah.
So you know, it could be as simple as dad coming home work drunk, dad coming from work drunk, or dad going to a club and drinking alcohol and doing drugs, and coming home drunk. Why would a parent come home under the influence of some kind of substance? The
Yeah.
reason why they're doing that is because there's some level of depression that's going on. No one drinks
Yeah.
alcohol just to be drinking it. You drink it for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And no one do drugs just to be doing it. Drugs are too expensive. You just doing just be doing it. Nah,
Man.
you doing it
Man.
to, as Kanye West said, you got to pay for that addiction.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You got to
Back.
pay for that, you know.
Back. Paying
So
for
the
yeah.
idea is that, and I see, you know, as black men talking about it, we have a larger responsibility to see it beyond that. You know, we are actually the gatekeepers of our home and our family. We protect our
Mm-hmm.
family, provide for them. So what do we have to be in our best possible health and state? So if we're not in our best possible health and state, then that's what it means to be a dad, you know? And that's what, you know, you're never going to be the perfect dad, but a mediocre dad is way, way better than no dad at all.
Yeah. Well, to speak on that real quick, like Deion Sanders, right? He said something that had really resonated with me last year. He said with his sons and his daughter, he said, I wasn't a perfect parent, but I was always present.
Yeah.
And that's what all you can ask for. Like, look, I wasn't perfect. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
claim that, but I was present. I was there, you
You're
know.
right. I can understand what he said because, you know, in the early stages when I was having kids, when they were a little younger, my role was not as much. I didn't have my role wasn't as much because, you know, a
Yeah,
lot of
please
it is
explain that.
like
Yeah, please
needling
explain
work, you know, not a little, and usually mom was there to do that, you know, and I was there to provide any additional support. But it was really
that.
a low level position, but I had to be there at all times, 24
Mm-hmm.
hours, whatever it was, wherever I had to be, I had to be there. Am I involved? Not necessarily, but I'm in the room. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
But as you get older, your role become premier. When that boy gets 16 years old and that girl turns 27, 28 years old, your job is on front and center. That's when
Mm,
you become the male, because at that point, she's going to ask you directives. Your 16-year-old boy is going to ask you about some directives. He's going to ask you about things that you may or may not been thinking about, but you're having that conversation about sex and condoms and all kind of relationship issues, energies of between male and females. I have a daughter who's 23 years old. We have conversations. Her conversations with me is not necessarily about male energy. It's about how are you conducting yourself in the realm of male energy. So what
mm,
she's doing, she's picking up on my energy. She's not saying, but she's picking up.
yeah.
Energy is key. And having a male around who's 30 some odd years older than you, but the idea is to see how that is modeled. So while you're dating these 20-year-old guys that you're eventually going to have a relationship with and marry at some point, you're
Hmm.
feeling that energy. You're looking at old versus new, and you're getting that pattern. And that's where you come in.
Yeah.
You can't be there unless you're in the room. So if you're living there with the child and you're breathing with the child, she's going to pick up that energy. And that
Hmm.
energy have to be consistent. And that's
Hmm.
where our role becomes. Same thing with I have a young 9-year-old daughter as well. You see the energy. Oh, I'm gonna hang out with dad a little bit. I don't want to go with you, mom. I don't want to go. Let me hang out with dad a little bit. The reason why she's doing that is because she's trying to get the male energy
Hmm.
balance. She wants someone to take care of me physically, someone I can lean on, someone I can give my problems to, someone I can handle and come with solutions. That's what little girls want. And that's what you provide them with, the little answers for their problems. And then eventually they go away and then they come back. But
Yeah.
your road becomes much more, and that's why I see that young women have problems with have daddy issues as they get older. We see that when you date in the 20, 30, 40 year old. Oh, this girl got daddy issues. She do, because her daddy's still not around.
Mm.
And he
So they
needs,
don't know. They don't know what that energy looks like or feels like in a consistent present
yeah.
state. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
You got to be, your role becomes much more pronounced as the children get older. Not to say that it's not important in the beginning, because it is. You
Right.
still gotta. I still had to put barrettes in the hair and braid the hair. I still had to do the school drop off to make the lunch and go to parent teachers conference.
Yeah.
Still had to check homework and do all that
Yeah.
stuff. But it wasn't a reality every day. But I had to do it. But
Hmm.
now my role right now is like, Dad, when you pick me up from school, I got to talk to you about something else, about X, Y, Z, about a college, about a relationship, or about health issues. That
Yeah.
becomes a
Yeah.
little
Those,
bit more
those
important,
things.
because how a man would say something, an educated man versus an educated female, will sound a little bit different than a man who may not be educated or a female who may not be educated. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
So
I do.
a different perspective, you'll become more of a resource more so than I love you. A parent who don't know a lot is more like a I love you parent. I love
Hmm.
mom. Mom never went to school. She may have a substance abuse issue, and she not stable, but I love her. As
Yeah.
opposed to mom has insight. She has some kind of forward thinking, and you can ask her a question, and she can tell you 2 steps or 3 steps ahead what's going to be the outcome. That's
Right.
a real functioning parent, and that's what they want. They want a parent who have wherewithal, and marriage who don't have any hangups. Because I see, I was talking to my students who was doing a GED earlier today,
Hmm.
and they was talking about older women reinventing themselves, which looks like an accident all over again. You're 50, 60 years. I mean, you 40, 50 years old. You got the enhancements going on,
Yeah.
the makeup on your face. You got hair pieces and all trying to look more than what you really are. What is the purpose? And yet you're
Right.
supposed to be someone's parent. You get it?
Yeah.
You got to be somebody. You still playing that role.
Yeah.
You're interested in trying to get a relationship going, or trying to raise these kids. You know?
See, and that's what I'm saying. That's where that responsibility, that maturity and responsibility comes in, and like, how does one who doesn't have that know that they don't have it and be able to cultivate that? It's like that part, for the men and for the women. It's like, yo, you trying to, have again live your best life, but what
Yeah.
what is that, and why is that necessary for you? Like,
I know.
what is it?
I'm gonna say something that's gonna sound a little bit biased, but
Yeah.
it's gonna sound biased. But bear with me. A man
Okay.
shouldn't be single. We don't have any
I
reason for
agree.
him to be single.
I
We
agree.
have no reason.
I agree.
There's women that's out there that can cater to any and every need that we can
I
be actually bisexual, homosexual, and you still could have a female in your life in some way, shape, or form. You know what I'm saying? So the
Yeah.
idea is that a man should never be by himself unless he has some deep-seated mental health issues or structural issues going on in his life. You know what I'm saying? Because
Mm-hmm.
the world need his resources, whatever it may be, physical, mental, spiritual, social, emotionally, they need his resources. And the
Mm-hmm.
failure to provide those resources will breed those things we were talking about, the depression and the anxiety, the substance abuse, and all the other stuff that comes along. The world need him. Now, for a female, I don't know, a female can't, the reason why females are maybe single, I don't know. That's
Yeah.
the $1 million question. Because if you look in the black community, you have some of the most beautiful, gorgeous, most intelligent young ladies in the world
Definitely.
who are single. And we have no rhyme as to reason as to why.
Right.
We don't know. And I pray to God that I have my two daughters are not in that situation in the next 10, 15, 20 years. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
don't want my daughters to grow up to be single. I don't want them to, I'm gonna live a life with a dog and a cat, as my man Kevin Samuels used to say. You know what I'm saying? I don't want that.
No.
I want them to have a husband and some kids and be comfortable. And even if they live an alternative lifestyle, they still supposed to be comfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You can't
Yeah.
even, it's up to you.
Yeah.
You have to have that. I don't want you to be that way, you
Yeah.
know? But life is what it is, and but manhood is not what we thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
Manhood is a fleeing concept.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fleeing concept. This is a really good conversation, buddy. I
No,
really
it is.
enjoyed
It is. No, this is real. Like what you're saying. I mean, because like you said earlier, we need each other. We need
it.
each other in the scope of society. We all have skills. We all have,
Yeah. Hmm.
just skills and just life lessons to be able to teach each other and be able to not use each other, but be able to benefit off each other's energy and
Yeah.
roles and
Hmm.
just awareness.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason that we, like I said, I agree with you 100%.
Hmm.
I'm in the dating scope right now, but like I agree with you 100%. There's no reason that as men we should be single. Like there's
Oh
some
no.
it's for
Oh no.
everybody,
Oh no.
like
Not at all.
multiple people. Like, but
Yes.
I think we get in our own way, and I can speak for myself for sure. There were certain things I wasn't aware of, even in my own development. That I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
that like that is not as necessary as this. It's like certain age,
Hmm. Hmm.
age phases. I call them they call them the 7 sevens. The
Yeah.
0 to
Yeah.
7, 7 to 14, 14, 21, 21, 28, 28 to
Yeah.
35. So it's like you develop different things, especially if you don't have the right people around you. Say, well, you don't have to wait to develop this in this stage. You can develop this now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to translate into this later.
Yeah.
And like you said, that forethought, that looking like, hey, I see this little pattern here. You may want to think about this for the next 5 years, the
Yeah.
next year.
But you know what's
So
so beautiful? You know what's so beautiful about women is that women grow into who they are. It grows into the caliber of the individual, the man himself. So, for example, let's say he get a low echelon of women.
yeah,
She will eventually grow to that level of perfectionism. You know, she can
mm-hmm.
grow into that, and he just have to be that type of dude that can tailor that. You
Yeah,
know, if his inability to tailor his women mean that he got to go get a weaker, more flexible woman. You
yeah.
can't go out there and get a what you call an alpha female and expect her to behave the way you want her to behave. That ain't gonna happen.
That's see people take that like, oh, she behave, she your slave. See, that's how people
It
would.
ain't gonna happen. You can't get her. You can't get that. At some point you're gonna have to low grade a little bit, get you a B level or a C
Now,
level.
but like I said, what is people gonna say like, oh, well, he trying to say this, like, but so please break that down a little bit.
An alpha
I know
female
what you mean.
lady, an alpha female lady got all the parts together.
Yeah,
She's already know how to do it, and she is good at what she do as far as her husband is concerned. She
yeah,
have a husband. She know how to do what he need to have done, and the kids need to have done. She may even work a job, or she may even run a business. But she got it.
yeah.
She don't need a guy to come in there and help her do the things that she has already mastered. That's an alpha female. So
Okay.
he's going to come into her life and try to make it where he's going to tailor her life. She ain't going to do that. It ain't gonna work. That's what we find. At least I know when I talk to my daughter, she have most of her friends are alpha females. And I see my daughter's is an alpha female. She have that mentality.
Yeah.
And The man that's going to have to come in our life is going to be someone who's willing to allow to share that space. You have
Yeah.
to share that space with her because she's going to have a set of skills that's going to benefit both of you, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and he's going to have a set of skills that can benefit. So that's what an alpha female is. But a beta young lady who had maybe missing a few parts,
Mm-hmm.
she may be someone you can build with. You know, you can build with a young lady who may be a beta or maybe a epsilon or something like that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so the idea is you take one who may or may not be where they need to be, and then you bring them up the stage. Because it's
Yeah.
okay to have a strong man and a weaker woman, but it's hard to have a strong woman and a weak man. A strong woman will not deal with a weak man.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
They,
definitely. We're not talking about physically strength, family. We're talking about emotional, social, that
yeah,
resilience,
yeah,
that consistency, like those
mm,
achievements, and not even talking about material achievements, just wherewithal and just skill set and intellect and how to
mhm,
apply that intellect. Like that's what we're talking about. Like,
yeah.
you know,
And I mean, I see it all the time because most of the women I'm around, they're usually strong women.
yeah,
And
yeah.
some of the ones that I went to college with, they're still single. You know, I have one who just retired from I think from the FBI or something like that. She's single. She's 50 something years old. We went to college together. She said, I just retired, and I'm in the process of building my life in Atlanta right now. Great, but she is in no way, shape, or form to take a weak dude.
Mm-hmm.
No way. Her husband got to be, or whoever her partner's got to be, is as able-bodied as she is. The only person I see that coming in is someone who may be widowed or something like that. You know, because usually an alpha male and an alpha female are usually going to be maintaining a relationship. They're not going to be single. They're not single type of people. They're usually all together, put together. And if something happens to their partner, they're more likely to re-embrace another relationship, as
Yeah.
opposed to someone who may be needy. They're not going to re-embrace another relationship. You know, good people sniff out good people. You
Which
know,
is interesting because you would think the needy person would be like, I need to get in a relationship like right now, but not able to maintain it, right?
but
And
they have a lot of insecurities. For example,
true,
so let's say this guy retired from, let's say, a sanitation job, and he made a decent amount of money, right?
right?
And he's great, but he is never formally educated. But
Mm-hmm.
then you have the same young lady his age, but she may be in a district attorney or something like that, or a private law firm, and she's making 6, 7 figures.
Mm-hmm.
So ideally speaking, they would be a great couple to be with, but he's insecure about her bandwidth, her exposure to other people and things and environments.
Wow.
So if he's intimidated by that, it will hurt him to be in that relationship because he don't have the wherewithal to accept that wide variety that she comes to offer. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
therefore that even though that's a good couple,
Right.
but his insecurity prevents him from moving forward, and that's
Mm-hmm.
always the case. You have a
Wow.
lot of blue collar brothers who good brothers, but
Yeah.
they wind up. A blue collar brother will wind up 9 times out of 10 accepting a beta young lady, not an alpha female, but a beta female.
Yeah.
Usually he'll use his blue collar existence to control or to be comfortable in a blue collar relationship. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
she's a sanitation worker, and I mean he's a sanitation worker, and she may be maybe a police officer or something like that. They
Yeah.
good with that. They're
Yeah.
comfortable with that, as opposed to the other way around, you know. And
Definitely.
then I miss my man Kevin Samuels because he used to talk about that all the time.
Yeah. You
She not
know,
on
I
your
mean,
level, or you on your level. You remember that?
yeah, man. I mean, much respect to the brother. You know what I'm saying? I'm definitely not gonna talk, bad about that. I
Uh,
mean, I have definitely my issues with him, but he definitely did.
nah, he's a
But
good dude.
he did some things definitely that you can't get around, like as
Yeah,
men.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
certain people are just, with the excuse my language, with the shits. They just that's where our society is that they just
Yeah, yeah.
dealing with. Like they're with the lowbrow behavior and
Mhm,
actions, and it's
mhm.
like okay,
Yeah,
right, like. But as a man, you can't get around this. I don't care much money you got. I don't care what your status is in society. As a man, as a woman, you cannot get around these certain things. You cannot manipulate and try to make it. It just is what it is.
exactly.
You know?
And a quality individual. You know how it is. You've been to
Yeah,
college. You know how it
yeah.
is. A college educated relationship is different from a relationship that is not built on education.
It's
It's a
very
totally
true.
different environment. A college education that's built or a relationship built on business is different than a college education relationship,
Very true.
or a relationship that does not have college attached to it. So those are three levels of education or exposure that require different levels of energy. Not to say that they're not good relationships, because they're all a good relationship,
Yeah.
all productive, they're all great.
Mm-hmm.
But the cadence of that relationships moves differently.
Mm-hmm.
And it also talks a lot about when did that person receive an education is key. If
Mm-hmm.
you received a bachelor's degree, south of your 23rd birthday, then you tend to be a different level of individual than a person who received their college education north of 25 years old.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So there's a difference in how a person will move in that relationship. And they're talking primarily about men and women when they talk like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a person who the earlier you receive an education, more likely you're to have certain levels of qualities about yourself, as opposed to people who receive it. I'm getting my bachelor's degree at 45,
Yeah.
or a master's or a PhD at 50 or something like that.
Right.
To live a different level of lived experience, professional
Definitely.
lived experience.
Definitely.
So it's
Definitely.
been great conversation, buddy.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has, family. Yeah, thank Professor Kelly. Thank you so much for this convo. I mean, we definitely keep going, family, but time and whatnot. We definitely have another, but I wanted to have him on here and us to be able to discuss these things because we were talking about this recently, especially with Father's Day coming up, and just again, we talk about going forward with adulthood, manhood, families, communities. These are important conversations to have because we keep running into the same scenario, and we have the solutions. We have them here, but it's just you have to have the people around you and support around you to be able to carry them through and recognize that there is an issue, that you have an issue, and then you can correct the issue, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and that's important, man. Like, thank you, Professor Kelly, for
Thank
sharing
you very much. Also, and I don't mean to overly state Dr. Sowell, but I don't. That's a great piece of information he offers.
It is. It is. Definitely go do your research, fam. Dr. Thomas Sowell. Give you some insight on what we're talking about. And just again, this is all our opinion. You don't have to take it. You go tell that take it with a grain of salt if you want to. But what we're saying has some validity. So I would just need you to think about it. If you have some comments, put them down below. If you have some recommendations, put them down below in the comment section. And that's the conversation for today. Thank you, Professor Kelly. Thank you all for listening. Right, continue to listen on. Subscribe to my channel, Mr. Kyle Dixon, and we'll definitely have some more discussions that are important for us to know and for us to be a part of. All right. So thank you all. Be well, Professor Kelly. Thank you so much, sir.
God bless.
Again. All right, you all. Peace and love, family. Blessings, and we'll talk soon.